Given the fact that I'm probably one of the old guard that has attended every one of these breakfasts over the last 17 years, I could probably say that there's a bunch of mayors in here that have been there too. I want to welcome you. I am Terry Davis from Comcast, but I am the Vice President of the coalition. Welcome to the South Sound Chambers Legislative Coalition. This is where we gather to kick off the year and prepare for what is in front of us for a very challenging legislative session. But this group here represents the businesses of South King County. That's from the south end of Seattle running all the way into northeast Pierce County. And we have many friends also from different business organizations as well. We represent the businesses that need our help, making sure that they can get their people to work. They can get their goods to and from our ports to them and their customers. And we need to make sure that we have an environment that thrives, that recognizes that small businesses are truly the backbone of our great economy, especially here in the Puget Sound region and the state of Washington. First off, I would like to ask any and all elected officials to please stand and be recognized. We have learned over those 17 years it is much better. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It is much easier to make sure that we just ask you to stand at once, and I do not want to leave anybody out. So thank you very much for your time and effort and your commitment to your communities to help us thrive. We cannot do this without sponsors. I, again, work for Comcast, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be a sponsor of this great coalition. Comcast serves residents and businesses across our service territory, which includes all of the South Sound Coalition communities. We are very focused on connecting people to what is important in their lives. And there's no better commitment to showcase this than our digital equity effort. We know that there are many organizations that struggle to connect to the internet, that may not have a smartphone that they can just easily open up, connect to their families and loved ones. So we are dedicated and committed to helping solve these problems. And there's one organization in Burien that we recently helped out, Paralyzed Veteran Association of Washington. So in addition to Comcast, I want to thank and recognize the Seattle King County Realtors. Realtors have been a sponsor of the coalition since the start and the beginning. That's because realtors understand that quality of life. It all begins with a good job, and then a house or a place to live, a home that you can afford. That is the natural fit regarding the quality of life. So, all right, we have a lot of table sponsors in the room as well. So, Sam Pace, I want to thank you for your table sponsorship. Seattle Metro Chamber, Covington Chamber, Gallup-Sumner Chamber, City of Auburn, Highline College Foundation, Washington State Dental Association, Renton Technical College, and Imperial House. Thank you all for your commitment to the coalition. And what a great space. I didn't know that there was a conference center at Dave & Buster's, but I want to recognize our host sponsor, Dave & Buster's, and thank them for their commitment to the coalition. The power of the coalition is not necessarily just bringing people together, but it's also having somebody that is monitoring our priorities. Our priority paper is on the tables, and reporting back to us and making sure that we can be part of that conversation. We learned early on, in the early days of forming this coalition, that if you don't have a unified voice to come to the legislature with an answer for their questions, you're not going to get what you want in the end. And that is why we have hired Carolyn Logue, our lobbyist that represents us down in Olympia. This is the reason that we meet, so that we can help raise money to make sure that she is in Olympia. And I want to invite her to the stage and thank her and recognize her as she helps us move through the panel discussions through the rest of the meeting.
So what we're going to do is we have each of the chamber execs to pick sort of a topic, and they're going to just sort of do a little presentation on what this means for the South Sound Chamber. These are areas where the chambers have all talked, they meet regularly, and they have actually put this together. This is a joint project. So while each chamber may have some other things, these are the things that together they think are the most important for the South Sound region, to take to legislators and to ask that all of our businesses and our local officials are also helping with down in Olympia to keep this area thriving. So with that, I'm going to start first of all on the education and workforce. We have Samantha Lee from the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce. Education and workforce is an issue that is incredibly important, because I haven't met a business yet that it doesn't need some sort of impact and input from the education system or workforce in order to actually be successful. And by education and workforce, we mean it's kind of a womb to the tomb kind of thing. So you have early learning, all the other things in childcare, but really looking at our K-12 system, youth apprenticeship programs, career and technical education within that system, then moving up into the secondary education, our community and technical colleges, our institutions of higher education, apprenticeship programs, and other opportunities for workers and businesses to participate in the education and workforce issues, but then also just how do you build that workforce. So Samantha, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about the issues important to the coalition?
Absolutely, thank you. And first, I just want to say good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today and for your ongoing commitment to strengthening the South Sound region. Again, my name is Samantha Lee, and I have the honor of serving as the President and CEO of the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce. And it's an honor to represent the South Sound Chambers of Commerce Legislative Coalition and speak on a topic that is so vital to our collective success: education and workforce development. Our region's workforce is the backbone of our economy, with over 3,262 businesses employing nearly 186,000 workers and generating over $100 billion in revenue. We must ensure that our workforce remains prepared, resilient, and ready to meet the demands of today and tomorrow. While the state has made significant strides in investing in education and training, challenges persist. Workforce shortages are pervasive across all regions and industries, from healthcare to manufacturing and technology to the trades. We need to bridge the gap between education and employment by creating a seamless pipeline that supports students, displaced workers, and employers. However, there are so many barriers, like access to childcare, housing, and transportation, continue to prevent many from participating fully in the workforce. On top of that, navigating systems like FAFSA and obtaining technological resources remain significant hurdles for those seeking further education training. Now, what's the solution? We know it works. Accelerator and Navigator programs provide a roadmap to success. These programs fund work-based learning opportunities such as internships and job site experiences, ensuring that students can earn while they learn. Highland College's recent Career Launch grant for its legal studies program is a prime example of how public investments can build bridges between educational institutions and businesses. But we need to do more. The legislators must first expand and sustain funding for Accelerator, Navigator, and training programs, allowing businesses of all sizes to benefit from student interns while students gain financial support and experience. And let me be clear, when students graduate, they need to walk away with more than just a diploma. They need transferable skills, work experience, and certifications that set them up for success whether that's entering a workforce directly, pursuing further education, or building their own business. Second, to enhance funding for career and technical education programs, ensuring that all students, including displaced adults, have access to training that leads directly to high demand and high wage jobs. Finally, support pathways beyond college that include trade-focused education and apprenticeship programs, and skill centers giving individuals the opportunity to define success on their own terms. Now here's your call to action. We're asking legislators to prioritize these investments during the session by funding programs that connect students to careers. We're not only addressing workforce shortages, we're also creating economic and social mobility for individuals and families. At the same time, we must strengthen partnerships between businesses, schools, and community organizations, chambers of commerce, workforce development councils, and other groups play a crucial role in aligning regional goals, tracking progress, and celebrating success. So let's create measurable objectives and hold ourselves accountable to ensure progress. In closing, education and workforce development are more than just priorities. They are investing into the future of our region. By coming together and advocating for these solutions, we can ensure that every individual has the opportunity to succeed and every business has access to the talent that they need to thrive to continue to offer quality products, services, and solutions for our community. Thank you for your time and for your partnership in this critical effort. Let's make this legislative session one that creates lasting change for the South Sound.
So another big issue, and Samantha brought it up, is housing. And I know that everybody is kind of watching. I mean, I think all areas of the state, I haven't heard of one yet that doesn't have an issue with housing. We have people looking for housing. Housing is getting very expensive. You want your workers to live close to where your business is, but it's getting harder and harder and harder for people to do that. We hear terms like middle housing. We hear terms like transit-oriented development. We hear terms like multifamily tax exemptions. We hear terms like rent control. All of these things are playing in the South region. Some have positive impact, some have negative impact, but I think in the end, what this coalition has been trying to work towards is what is the best way to get to the ability for people who live here and work here to stay here and live here and work here without having, I mean, granted, John, we love the transportation projects, but it would be nice not to have to drive all of it. So just to get to work. So with that, I think I'm going to start with Kacie, who's the CEO of the Auburn Area Chamber of Commerce, to talk a little bit about housing, and then I think we'll move on to Andrea after that.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming here to our beautiful Auburn city. Welcome for joining us, and we just want to thank you for hearing all these important issues that we have to discuss here today. The Puget Sound region of Washington is facing a critical shortage of affordable housing. To name a few of the issues that are currently impacting affordable housing: 1, lack of affordable housing. The Affordable Housing Advisory Board estimates that Washington needs to add over 1 million new homes in the next 20 years, with nearly half of those homes being affordable to households earning less than 50% of the area's median family income. Number 2, housing wages. The National Low Income Housing Coalition estimates that in Washington state, residents need to earn more than $36 an hour to afford the average price 2-bedroom apartment. 3, housing costs in King County. In 2023, 70% of low-income households in King County spent more than 30% of their income on housing. 4, housing costs. The Department of Housing and Urban Development ranks Seattle metropolitan area housing market as the 6th most expensive in the nation. 5, lack of diversity in the housing development. Women and people of color are underrepresented in the housing development, particularly in multifamily projects. 6, barriers to building affordable homes. Barriers to capital and technical support are stalling the production of affordable housing. What can you do to support affordable housing for all? Lot splitting. reforming the Subdivision Act to streamline the permitting process and allow lot splitting, improving the development of recent middle housing and accessory dwelling units legislation, along with allowing of detached accessory dwelling units in rural areas. Yeah. Increasing transit-oriented development housing opportunities by providing effective incentives for units to be built, rather than imposing well-intended mandates that won't pencil and make it largely impossible for the private sector to build TOD housing. Housing in commercial buildings. Incentivize conversion of vacant, underutilized commercial buildings or portions of those buildings for residential units. HOA and Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act reform. Address condominium supply challenges that are exacerbated by the state's complex HOA statutes and liability laws. Finally, preserving more low-income housing through healthy home repair programs which result in long-term affordable housing at lower costs than new construction. And then I want to touch base quickly on one of the things that is a huge topic right now in the legislation is rent control. Despite overwhelming research that has been established, rent control is a bad idea. Over time, rent control drives mom and pop landlords out of the market, thereby reducing the number of rental units below what otherwise would have been available. Also, rent control discourages private investments in new apartments and other rental properties that would help with the housing supply shortage that is driving up rents. And over time, the foreseeable but unintended impacts of rent control are especially burdened to the most economically disadvantaged renters. And to speak a little bit more on that and in depth, as Andrea has had to experience this in the Tacoma area, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kacie, and thank you. It's wonderful to be here with my fellow chamber CEOs. I know we also have some other CEOs in the audience. Allison with Puyallup Sumner, Becca with Federal Way, Dana with Covington. Again, what is not unique about our community are our challenges, but what is unique is our ability to come together in that same spirit of collaboration and partnership. Housing is an integral part for us at Tacoma Pierce County to fulfill our mission to be the most equitable, inclusive, and thriving place to do business in Washington State. Being able to have a safe place to live, an attainable place to live that is close to work, helps business and helps workers. I think so often in these conversations, these are items that are talked about being mutually exclusive. These are not mutually exclusive endeavors. We can support workers and we can support business, and we can do that through meeting some of our housing objectives. Specifically, Measure 1 passed by 370 votes last year in the city of Tacoma. It was an initiative run by the people that was produced in a vacuum. We know that good policy does not happen in a vacuum. Good policy happens when we have an opportunity to reach across the divide, to talk about, we might not agree on everything, but we can have an opportunity to listen and to learn with curiosity and an open mind. When we have the ability to do that, we will get good policy, and we will get good policy that works. Again, Measure 1, some of the impacts that we're tracking with our data, we have lost housing. And the unintended consequences of Measure 1 absolutely are the families who have lost housing are the most vulnerable, because the small, independent landlords who were already renting at below market have not been able to maintain the risk associated with enacting Measure 1. They have sold their properties. We have lost units. People are not able to live in the communities where they have lived. Their children aren't able to go to school where they have been going to school. The impacts have been devastating for families. Again, what I would say is that what we also need to do as a business community is not just come to the table to say no, but we need to come to the table and say yes and. Yes, we have an immediate crisis. We have an immediate crisis with attainable housing and making sure that housing is affordable for everyone who lives and works in the South Sound. And we're committed to finding policies and programs that work to keep people in their homes, to keep kids in school, in their school, where they have established that amazing connection that we know is so important and vital for their learning. Again, thank you so much, Samantha, for talking about education and workforce development. K through 12 education is a big part of that. And when kids are having to move and switch schools, it absolutely is a detriment. And so how are we able to do that? Programs that work, programs like rental assistance, programs that help to increase housing stock. So again, we're continuing to track what the impacts of Measure 1 are, what those unintended consequences are, and hopefully ensure that we're able to fix some of the challenges and some of the unintended consequences of this legislation in Tacoma. And I think most importantly, have an opportunity to get it right for the state of Washington. We have not just an obligation, but we have a duty to do it right in Washington state, to fix our housing crisis once and for all and to be a leader to our nation. I know we can do this, and I look forward to working with you and everyone in this room to get it right for Washington state. So thank you.
I think we're going to move next to public safety. We have Diane Dobson, who's the CEO of the Renton Chamber, who's going to talk about public safety and how, and this is super important coalition. And interesting, I'm just going to put a little aside. This is something that when I started working with the coalition about 10 years ago, wasn't a big issue, and it has been growing.
It has, thank you, Carolyn, and it has been growing, and Renton has the unique opportunity to serve on two different coalitions, the East King Coalition and the South Sound Coalition that we're friends of, and it is a problem in both coalitions. Public safety is foundational. It's not just about crime rates and numbers, it's about how safe our employees feel when they go into work, how safe our customers feel when they walk into a store, and how safe those small business owners feel locking up at night. Andrea hit it on the head as far as we can reach across the aisle and find that common ground towards solution. The South Sound Coalition is asking for emphasis in 3 specific areas: to improve and increase public safety funding, including the police, increasing police presence, access to mental health and drug addiction services, more prosecutors, and sufficient public defenders. You'll notice we did not just say increase the police. We recognize that there are other tools and resources that we need to reach across that aisle and implore you to find those solutions that work upstream. We're continuing to clean up the water that we're seeing on the ground rather than looking up and finding where that leak is at. And so with that emphasis on the first responders, we're also asking you to be creative in those approaches. We're asking you to help retailers by passing policies that give tools to make their stores and their employees and their customers feel safe. We thank you for the work on Initiative 2113 with restoring the reasonable pursuit, but that is not all that we need. We ask that you enact legislation that will stop organized retail crime and remove access to selling stolen products online and through other resources. Washington State had the second highest in the nation in retail theft in 2021, $2.7 billion. That was extra zeros that I wasn't anticipating when we looked into it. And we need lawmakers to pass the laws that make sense with the organized retail crime. In addition to increased raising prices, increased crime has made customers reluctant to shop locally. Labor shortages are compounded when employees do not feel safe. We asked for expansion of law enforcement capacity, mental health and addiction services. There are items that have come forward through the legislature this year For example, mandatory assessment for multiple overdoses. A person can go into an emergency room time after time after time and prescribe Narcan time after time after time. If you go in to an emergency room with a mental health suicide ideation, you are subject to a mental health examination. You are not subject to that same examination with multiple overdoses. We're asking for adequate staffing of designated crisis responders. In King County, I'll speak to, we have funding for 35 designated crisis responders. Those are the individuals that can refer someone to involuntary substance abuse. 35. Only 23 of those positions are filled. We're asking lawmakers to look at reasonable solutions like that our behavioral health specialists are crying out saying, let's look at the cause of the crime that we're experiencing and what can we do to reduce the crime. Drugs and substance abuses are a huge issue with that. Overall, our public safety and behavioral health, it impacts everybody. For-profit businesses, nonprofits, residents, government agencies. It's not just a business issue, and it's a community issue. And that's not just for our lawmakers in the room, but for our community that's in the room. The Southside Chambers, we ask you to lead with proactive solutions. Fund training, recruitment, retention of law enforcement and personnel. We have a 21% vacancy rate in positions statewide for law enforcement personnel. And together we must prioritize prevention over reaction. We cannot continue to clean up that water while ignoring the leak above us. So please be creative with that approach. And again, it's not asking for defund the police. We're saying there are, in addition to increasing the police presence and the legal aspects, that we also have that accountability and creative approach.
Next, we have Zenovia Harris with the Kent Chamber of Commerce. And Zenovia, you're going to talk about support for small business. I think that's a very broad category.
Right.
But I think it's important to remind everybody, as I'm sure you probably will, about most of our businesses are small. And they're not the big giant. I think there's a focus often for legislators and the communities to kind of think, oh, business people are Jeff Bezos. And mostly it's just the person sitting next to you who just tried to create their own job or had a really great idea and then is trying to create jobs for other people. So if you want to talk a little bit about what the chambers want to do for small business.
Of course, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Samantha here, CEO for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. I'm so glad to be here with my fellow chamber executives because I have the topic of small business, but I literally could just throw everything that I've written down away because I'm really just going to reiterate what they were talking about. And I think what's really important for us to understand is that small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. And we have to realize that we were talking earlier about the shift when public safety wasn't a big issue and it wasn't something that we were talking about. We also have to recognize that the landscape of the small businesses has actually changed, right? And so it is not just mom and pop, it's not businesses that have been passed down generation after generation. These are new folks who are opening businesses, so then there are other barriers that come along with that. So there's a knowledge gap of how things work. What's this permitting issue? Why can't I lock my door at this time, right? So you have that educational barrier. Then you may have a language barrier, right? And then the one thing that we see all the time is the resource barrier. There are some people that, again, are starting these businesses for a multitude of reasons, and one of those reasons is just because they want to create their own future. They want to be able to be in control of that. And unfortunately, if you don't have the resources available to you to be able to do that, which includes information, which includes knowledge, resources, that's going to be difficult for you. So it's very important that we are all supporting small businesses and we're using this kind of three-pronged approach. It's your policymakers, your chambers of commerce, and your broader business community. There are people where we can bind together. This is not a one-person fix-all. This is not put the money in one basket and it's going to be fixed for all businesses. If you look at this, kind of trifecta approach, you're going to see that each person has a privilege within that. Right? So the policymakers have their own privilege, commerce we have our own privilege. We get phone calls. I got a phone call last night before walking out of the door of a lady who said she was going to sue one of my small businesses for $5 million because Her husband they refused to allow him to go to the restroom because they said they didn't have public restrooms. And there is a law, of course, this was late, I didn't leave, so I didn't look at it, but she ran down the entire law and sent it over to my email. So now I have to do some research on that. There may be other businesses who are not allowing people, for a multitude of reasons, public safety being one, to use their bathroom, right? So if I have 3 employees there, do I want someone who I believe is experiencing a mental health issue to come and use my private bathroom? Right? So there's these things when we're talking about knowledge and information in the gap. As chambers, we are helping kind of fill that gap. So there's 4 things as far as supporting small business. You have labor shortage, there's regulatory burdens, public safety concerns, and then workforce pressures. And so what we're asking are a few very simple things, right? And I say simple because if you look at the root of the issue, it may be easier to solve rather than looking at all of the other factors. If we just honestly get to the root of the issue. And so the first thing is reducing financial and regulatory burdens. So avoid additional costs or mandates on employment that strain small businesses, particularly for our independent contractors. We want to keep Washington competitive. We want to keep Kent competitive by ensuring tax stability and reassessing your budget priorities. Again, we want to talk about expanding, so that the other one is investing in workforce development. Sammy touched on that, and I appreciate that, and it was, they want to earn and then learn. They want to learn and then earn, or earn and learn, right? Fill in the blank. But I also am adjunct faculty for Green River College, and I teach business students. We did a business development course, we're just sitting this quarter. The lack of skills for communication for those students and their desires to learn that was critical. So we have to understand that. Again, when we're looking at fixing these problems, yes, you can come to chambers of commerce, but when we're talking about workforce development and CTE programs and things like that, we probably should also be talking to the students. We should be talking to the person or the people or the community that's affected by the issue, yes? And so again, just calling in those people to make sure that there are multiple pathways for job-ready workforce that meets the business needs. Also addressing public safety, period. I mean, there's not really much, I have some stuff written here, but why say all that, right? Public safety is an issue, and we definitely need to figure that out because it is costly, right, for the business. It's costly as far as your employees are concerned as well. We have folks who are now paying, in addition, if you're working late. If it's dark outside, you now have an additional rate added there. That's a problem. That's signaling a problem for us. And then the other one is promoting attainable housing. We did not say affordable housing. We said attainable housing, and there's a big difference, and you have enough realtors in the room here that can kind of go over that with you. But it is really the development through infrastructure funding and multifamily tax exemptions. And then we're going to talk about chambers, right? This is again where we get to take privilege. This is an event that we have worked on year after year after year. And I think what has happened, if I could just take liberties for the group, what has happened is chambers of commerce have always been in the business of supporting businesses. Right? And so chambers of commerce are nonprofit organizations. And so what we look for is how is it that we can make the biggest impact for our members? And we all know that takes resources. It also takes education for us. And so we are, I think for the first time, and definitely the first time in 6 years that I've been part of the Chamber of Commerce, we're asking legislators to lean into your chambers of commerce, to ensure that we have the resources, the education, the information, the monetary resources to be able to support those businesses. Trusted messaging is really important. And not that you all are not trusted, but we all know people go to certain people for certain things. And the Chamber of Commerce, ours specifically, 76 years, 100 years, 120 years. I mean, we have been around a very long time. And so if we are equipped to be able to support you in that trifecta approach, we are willing to do that. And so, there's one program I'd like to call out that the KIT Chamber is a part of, and we support all of our local chambers with this, as well as the Community Business Connector program. I think Southside Chamber is also a part of that program. And we're connectors, we're problem solving, and we're building a support system. And so we have been able to offer small business support, technical support, what I would call hold your hand support to over 800 underserved businesses in the last 2 years, and that's only with 7 connectors. And so, yes. So again, just to kind of wrap it up, there are 3 ways legislators can support chambers: provide tax credits for chamber support, so the same thing you see for like mainstream or main tax as well, that's something that you can do. Fund small business programs via the chamber, and then also collaborate on policy development. We are a unit here. You call Kacie, Kacie doesn't know, she calls Diane. Diane doesn't know, she calls me. But the one thing you can know for sure is that we will show up and bring in the voices of our businesses. These are not our concerns. These are the concerns of over, 8,000, I don't know how many members Tacoma has, probably thousands. 1,400 members, right? So we have a lot of members that are counting on us to be the spokesperson that we have been chosen to do. So we're just kind of leaning in and letting you know that you can reach out to the chambers, and we'd be willing to sit at the table and talk about what's going to be that most utilitarian decision that we can make for our businesses. So again, we just appreciate you. Thank you so much for your support, and looking forward to any questions you may have.
One thing you might notice about the Southside region is while we have roads and we have land, we also have an awful lot of water. And we've been fortunate in the last couple of years to have Amy Dreyer from the Vashon Island Chamber of Commerce join us. Probably had the most difficult commute, I would say, probably today. Yeah, probably. But anyhow, so it's really exciting for us to have Vashon here because we recognize that in the Southside region, people don't just come to us via roads. People don't just live a drive away. They often have other means of transportation that they need to take to get to their work. And that's not going to change because it is one of the advantages of the area that we live in. So Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you and talk about your little neck of the woods and the transportation issue we've added to the coalition agenda.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Amy from Vashon Island, and I just, want to kick off by saying that Vashon's story is not one of isolation. More than anyone, we understand that moving people is moving commerce, and moving people is moving ideas, and both of those things are vital to, every aspect of business. And we have, since the Washington State Ferry crisis sort of escalated and took off in 2021, the island has begun to organize to bring our communities together to address the crisis of the Washington State Ferries. And we have 2 sort of planks. One is the Fix Our Ferries Coalition, which we started this summer with 3 sign-on organizations. We are now up to 20 sign-on organizations from 8 communities across the Puget Sound, all the way from Vashon up through Bremerton. We're working with Bainbridge now, and we're up into the San Juans, Bill Clinton. And we understand that until Washington State Ferries is fully functional, our regional economy will not be fully functional. We are down to 16 of 21 boats to get the ferry system up to par. That's 16 of 26 boats that would take the ferries to where we really need them to be those east-west arteries, right? From the east side of the Sound to the west side of the Sound. And we don't think they're gonna expand the Tacoma Narrows Bridge anytime soon. So how are we gonna move people east-west, right? Because we know that everyone wants access to the Kitsap Peninsula. That is just a growing area in our region, and we need to be able to move people back and forth. So the big planks of the Fix Our Ferries Coalition is to fully fund continuing construction of our boats. It is to fully fund equitable and competitive wages for the crews for the boats. And it is to ensure that we have all the transparency and accountability that we need from Washington State Ferries for our community needs to be met. So, that's sort of that's our first plank that we talk about on Vashon when we talk about restoring our marine highways. And, and then you've really seen, all of the communities that have invested in the Gateway project, right? The enormous investment in moving people. The public investment in Washington State Ferries continues, but ridership continues to go down. We want to reverse that trend. We want to get people back on the boats, moving back and forth. And, again, we want to give everyone access east-west in the Sound. You know, imagine getting access to more workers, more customers, more ideas, more resources without having to build new homes. That's what it means to move people successfully along our highways, right? And so we are absolutely looking for folks to join the Fix Our Ferries Coalition on that plank. The other piece that we are talking about sort of outside of our regional coalition and where Vashon would love to bring leadership is reimagining our passenger-only service in the Puget Sound, right? Imagine, again, being able to access hundreds and thousands of people who can move back and forth across our waterways at scalable local solutions, right? To bring you visitors, to bring you workers, to bring you ideas. And imagine being able to do that in a way that is highly climate friendly. And so we are very, very invested in working with the legislature to bring leadership around sort of reviving the mosquito fleet, right? To kind of bring back an old idea. And sometimes old ideas are good ideas. So we want to take a look at that in sort of a 21st century way. And you know, our marine highways, best joke, right? It's sort of a blue ocean, right? Approach to who's moving where. There is so much room on our marine highways to get people back and forth and to solve a lot of our problems that we have with transit without building new homes, right? We are simply talking about moving people more effectively in the Puget Sound region. And we are so blessed to have, you know, not just the ability to move people efficiently back and forth, but to bring in tourism, right? Imagine if your community isn't water adjacent, is it adjacent to water adjacent? Are the multimodal solutions getting people from potential, you know, low investment passenger only docks into, you know, penetrating further into the heart of the region? So, you know, we very much want to talk to people regionally about our support for reviving the mosquito fleet, and we're going to be bringing this to Olympia, not just through our, you know, Fix Our Ferries coalition. It's kind of unbelievable that we started it this summer, and we now have 20 sign-on boards from 8 different communities in the Sound, and we are looking to grow that. So fixourferries.org is the best way to connect with us. And the ways you can support that, connect with us, sign on to our coalition letter. We'll be having our Fix Our Ferries lobby days, February 4th through the 6th in Olympia, where we'll be working with all of our regional partners. We'd love to have you come on down, connect with us about how we can, you know, help advance our marine highways. It really is the story of the Puget Sound, and we want to revive the success of that story.
With that, I'm going to open up to a couple of questions, but I do want to bring up one issue that we are hearing and that might happen in the legislature this year, and I know all of your communities, I think, for the most part, have had impacts from this, and it's the minimum wage issue. And while we understand how important it is to pay workers the wages so they can live, you've heard all the statistics about how much it takes to live in this area. I just wonder if each of you can talk a little bit, maybe just pass the mic, about the impacts and some of the things you've heard from your businesses about impacts of these minimum wage increases. What is it doing to their business, their ability to bring on new employees, their ability to keep the employees they have, their ability to give other people raises, and the ability to actually still function in a community where they probably can't raise their prices very easily. So I don't know who wants to kind of start with that.
I can start just briefly. I think one of the things that does impact our small businesses is that inflation, right? So if costs go up for them to operate, costs are going to go up for us. And so when we have a coffee stand, that's something that they've had for 20 years, and they love their employees, but yet they have to pay them more, and other things that are going with that whole wage, I would say, initiative in Olympia. It makes it so it forces them out of business because you can't charge $10 for a cup of coffee. So seeing businesses look at whether they're going to have to close or pay somebody, it just really hurts us because it inevitably that person doesn't have a job, and then we don't have that business in our community. And we all know that our business taxes actually is what thrives our general fund, that provides the opportunities for our communities, our parks and our schools and our police officers. So it's really an economic flow, and we really have to look at that as a whole when we're making these decisions.
like following Kacie. So yeah, again, really complicated issue. I think that what is always so difficult in the conversations about minimum wage is that it's presented as a silver bullet to fix the affordability crisis or the economic equity crisis that we have in the state, and it's just not that simple. The minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage, and we need to have that conversation in tandem with how we're creating equitable economic development. Zenovia, thank you so much for talking about it. A big part of that is entrepreneurship. We know business owners make 19% more than the median wage, in our communities. How do we encourage entrepreneurship? I saw, Lynette was here from the Seattle Metro Chamber. Seattle has amazing data from what happened when minimum wage went up there. Minimum wage went up, hours went down. Workers were making the same amount of money, right? So we're not, kind of pushing the needle in the right direction in the way that we want to with creating equitable economic development if we're just talking about minimum wage. Thank you so much also, Kacie, talking about there's also a different impact for small and micro businesses and how we are looking at what those impacts are. We want to be able to guard against displacement, not just for residents in the South Sound, but also for businesses in the South Sound. And a big part of what closes small businesses, are the costs of doing business. And so how do we have an honest conversation? How do we come together, to solution find to start those conversations to say, yes, we need to find ways to increase income in the state of Washington and support small business. And I know we can do that, but it's not as simple as just raising the minimum wage.
Andrea, was when you spoke about it's not simple. It's not a simple fix, it's not a silver bullet. What I would urge legislators and lawmakers to do is if you have this initiative coming forward in your community and not just on a statewide level, reach out to your chambers of commerce that are working with those businesses to find out how your endorsement or your support of these initiatives is going to really impact the businesses. In the Renton community, we had this initiative passed in February, and July 1st. Many of our businesses experienced a 25% increase in their payroll. 25%. $7 in the last 3 years our minimum wage has increased. Here's an apples to apples black and white comparison. We were really excited to have Crumble Cookie come join us in Renton. They were excited to come, except for the fact they have 4 other locations. Kirkland, Redmond, Issaquah, Federal Way. I can name 3 of them that's probably a little more higher living than cost of living than Renton. However, in Renton, it will cost them $250,000 more a year in payroll. $250,000 more a year in payroll. Where we're also seeing a challenge is with our worksite learning coordinator for our high schools. She is trying to get jobs for her teenagers that cannot work more than 20 hours a week, that cannot get a full-time job. However, this initiative that came forward created the requirement, if you are an employer, before you offer part-time employment to a new employee, you have to offer those hours to your existing part-time employees. Now we're finding businesses that cannot offer that part-time employment to their students. We're finding teenagers that cannot compete with 30-year-olds that are coming in to get those $21 an hour minimum wage jobs. And we're also seeing it impact the school district. So the school district pays their teacher academy students, the juniors and seniors in high school, pays them to teach the lower K-5 students how to read. Literacy rates are soaring. However, the grant funds are now running out. What should have lasted 2 years will be out at the end of this year, 2024. That will have to cut that program. So there are unintended consequences with a very a noble initiative and effort. However, the conversation did not happen between the two parties. It is a single group driven initiative, if you will, without the collaboration and conversation that we are asking lawmakers to continue to have with your colleagues and with your communities in coming together with solutions that make sense for our communities.
So I wanted to bring a future lens into this specific topic. In 2026, in the summer, we are inviting the world into our backyard with FIFA coming. Public safety is a huge concern because when businesses have their doors closed because they can't pay, to keep their doors open all day, and our restaurants are closing down halfway through the day, or they only open for dinner. What happens is, because the space isn't activated, crime enters. People come and, have activities, unwanted activity activated in the space because businesses are closed. We want people to stay and play and spend their money in our economy. But if our businesses are unable to open and operate fully, then we're inviting, we're doing a disservice to our business community. With FIFA coming around the corner, it's crucial to ensure that our businesses stay activated, that they are well staffed, and that our visitors want to come back and return.
Zenovia?
I know it's coming, and the mayor and I have given the side eye looking over here. It's something, a conversation I think that every community should be having with their legislators. Is there something that we can do? Not just chambers of commerce, but other business associations. Are we talking to the people that this really affects, right? And so I own a business, I live and work and own my business in the same city, but that is not the same for everyone else. And so while we're out talking to business owners and leaders, we've got to figure out who's that trusted messenger for the employees. Because on one hand, it sounds like we don't want you to make more money, and that is absolutely not the truth. We want folks to make more money, but we also need it to be sustainable for the businesses, again, that for all the reasons that were said, have to be in our community. And so if we get ahead of the issue and converse with the people, again, conversing with the people who's going to be most affected by it, which are going to be the employees who may not be able to have housing, or they may get laid off and now they got to move. I mean, there's just this trickle effect that could happen for something like that. And again, if we have the conversation before we're more proactive versus reactive, we'd have better solutions, and more people would be helped, not less. More people would be helped if we use that particular approach.
Thank you. So I'm going to wrap it up. I think bring up Sam Pace to do the final, but I just want to thank all of our chamber executives.
We have all of those just amazing chamber execs, and we also have Carolyn, Logue, our lobbyist, who we've got flowers for her too, because she is our force multiplier. And I want to thank all of you for coming. Somebody, maybe a lobbyist, might have said something about having a long drive from Olympia, but I know we've got folks from Kittitas who drove through the snowstorm and traction tires required this morning. And we also had Amy who came this morning, and like a lot of folks, she doesn't know whether or not there's going to be a road when she shows up at the ferry dock if there's no boat. So thanks to all of you who made special efforts to come. I've taken a moment to look in the rearview mirror. But think about your own vehicle. The rearview mirror is about that big. The windshield in front of us is much bigger. We're remembering where we've come from. We're aware of what we've accomplished, but our eyes are on the bigger, longer-term landscape. There are some opportunities for you to participate and help with that. One is by insisting that you require yourself to be a member of your local Chamber of Commerce. The second is all of these amazing ladies have kick-ass government affairs programs, and they're all looking for help. And the third is, if you don't have time, because you're just making so much money working 24 hours a day. We always have room for you to be a sponsor of this event. With that, I want to thank all of you that came, and I have 10 words for you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Have a great week.